Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to the live session of week 5 in HIT 226. So, given that we have already a video embedded in the lesson area, and there is a recording provided to everybody with instructions on week 5 Excel assignment, I decided not to be redundant and go over those again. Instead, I'm just going to focus a little bit on tables and graphs and then address any questions that you have. So it's going to be probably a short session. Okay, so there are two basic types of data presentation tools, tables and charts. Okay, tables are pretty popular because you can include tons of data in the tables, and it can help organize your thoughts and look at the data systematically, and there's a great level of detail that can be included in the tables. I'm actually going to take you to some pretty impressive tables from a CMS website that's called CMS Data Navigator. Okay, and we're gonna see some of those in action. But let me finish with the PowerPoint, and then I'll share my screen, and we'll go to that data. Um, then there's graphs. Okay, so with graphs, there's a number of them. However, for the purpose of this class, we have only focused on the bar graphs. And some people use the word chart, some graphs. It doesn't matter, really. Pie charts, line graphs, histograms, frequency polygons, scatter diagrams, and bubble charts, scatter charts as well. So you see the word diagram, graph, chart, they're kind of synonyms to each other. Okay, so there is you can't really go wrong by using one or another. Okay, just from a terminology standpoint. So when I bring up the CMS Data Navigator website, there will be some Excel tables there, and then from there I'm going to build some bar graphs, pie charts, and line graphs. So I'm going to leave the top 3 at the end. I will explain those 3 at the end in action. So just going through the histograms right here. So a histogram is similar to a bar graph because there are bars, as you see, vertical bars, okay? Although sometimes they can be horizontal. It doesn't, some call them column charts or bar charts is the same thing depending on your Excel version, which you might have there in the book you're reading. So that's the same thing. But the difference between the bars and the histograms, the bar charts and the histograms, is that in a histogram, you usually display data in a continuous um, fashion. So in a bar graph, you can compare different categories of something. Let's say the average length of stay among 5 area hospitals for a particular disease. You can compare that data through a bar chart. However, if you wanted to actually look at the length of stay data in a continuous fashion, and let's say you're presenting something such as, okay, from 0 to 14, this is an example with age, but let's assume that this is days of a length of stay, and let's say it's a long-term care facility for a moment, then you could say we had 400 plus patients that had a length of stay from 0 to 14, okay? Or so again, I'm just saying for the moment because I picked the length of stay example uh, just to make sense of it. That's how you would present it. Or if you had counted all the patients whose length of stay was between 15 and 29, then you would see, look at the second piece here, 15 to 29, that is about 300. So there were 300. If the length of stay is 30 to 44 days, then that counting of the patients actually is 1200. Okay, so if we go back to the original example here with the age distribution, and on the vertical column here, we have number of patients again. So this would be the distribution of patients, let's say in a healthcare facility by age. Okay, so again, the difference between the bar chart is that histogram is not so much used to compare. It's used to show volume in a continuous fashion, plus do slight comparisons, because you can kind of do it all in this histogram. By virtue of building it in a systematic way and continuous putting here continuous data, you're building volume. You're seeing that, okay, so we have, a small number of patients from 0 to 14 years of age, and then even less between the teenage and 29 years of age, and then we have a growing number of patients when they go 30 and above. Okay, so that's that difference between the two. If you're ever thinking which graph should I select, look at the data you're presenting, the content of that data. What are you really trying to show? And then you pick either bar or the histogram. The frequency polygon is actually similar. It looks similar to line graph, but it's actually similar to the histogram. Okay, it's just that it's not built, it doesn't have those columns, it just have the dots. It has the dots and they are connected. So the frequency polygon, again, don't consider it similar to the line graph, but similar to the histogram. It's just another form of showing continuous data. Here we have that length of stay example that I mentioned earlier. This could as well be a histogram from 0 to 1 length of stay. How many patients did you have? From 1 to 2 with a length of stay of 2, or with a length of stay of 3, and so on. We had so many patients. So for example, we had, if I go to the number to 1, so with a length of stay 1, we had 20 some patients. Okay. Do you see my cursor when I move it by any chance? Just double checking. No. Oh, okay. Um, let me try to fix preferences. Show. Okay, do you see it now? Okay, yeah, that makes it a little easier. So if I'm looking at number 1 here, right, on the horizontal axis, I have length of stay of 1. How many patients? I draw a vertical line, perpendicular line here, and I come to this first dot. Okay, so this is 20 plus, maybe 24, something like that. Okay, so if I were to turn this into a histogram, then I would just draw a little line here, and then the other line, and then here it is. That's that little bar that's part of the histogram. And then for the next one, I would go up right here, and then build the other bar, and so on. Okay, does it make sense? That's why the frequency polygon is closer to the histogram. From a preference standpoint, this is not as much preferred as the histogram. However, if there is an abundance of data and the details don't matter as much, then maybe you could use this. Okay, it's less bulky. But as you see here, I have to kind of guess here what the value is here. I'm thinking, okay, it's between 20 and 30, and it's not quite in the middle, so it's not 25, so probably between 20 and 25. Okay, so from that perspective, it's not very easy to look at the details of the data. Right. Scatter diagram. This is actually very popular, and if you're ever engaged in a study and you're trying to figure out what is causing this or what is causing that, and you have two variables, maybe as simple as perhaps you're doing or helping a physician on a research or study, and maybe they're measuring the hours of exercise and weight loss, pounds lost. So if you were to put those in a scatter diagram, let's say you have 10 patients that are involved in this study, or 20 patients, it doesn't matter. and then you're recording for each of them the number of hours they exercised and the number of pounds lost for a certain period of time. Then you plug these numbers in a diagram, and if they come up like this in the first one, then, and we're assuming here that these are on the horizontal axis, we have the number of hours of exercise, and then in the vertical axis we have the number of pounds lost. So it seems like there is no regularity. You know, the one patient exercised a lot right here, this one a lot, but they only lost just a little bit of weight. On the other side, you know, we have some patients that had some decent hours of exercise, but they you know, they lost a little bit more. So we also have some others that exercised less but lost a lot of weight. Here they exercised less, but they didn't lose much. So you see, there is no regularity here, and we say there is no relationship. Now, if our data ended up lining like this, then it would mean that the more a patient exercised, the more hours they exercised, okay, the less weight they lost, which doesn't make sense in the example I gave. But if that was the case, then we would have a negative relationship. So how does that work? So I take the first patient here, okay? So this person exercised 0 hours and lost 20 pounds, okay? Assuming that those are my variables. Over here, this patient right here, I draw a perpendicular line right here. So exercised about 3 hours and lost about 14 pounds. Right here, this person exercised about 10 hours and lost about 2 pounds. Okay, so again, the more one variable increases, the more the other one decreases. Okay, so as x goes up, y goes down. So if that is the type of relationship you're seeing, it's called a negative relationship. And then last, this would make a little more sense for the example I shared. The more the person exercises, perhaps the more weight they might lose. Okay, and you can have different types of variables. It could be hours of study and the grade, maybe points they get in each activity, something like that. Okay, so in this case, as the hours of study increase, the number of points earned in each activity increase. Or as the hours of exercise increase, the weight lost increases. Okay, so do we understand scatter diagram? Okay, the other one that's popular is bubble chart. A bubble chart is actually just a plotting of the dots, really. The bubbles are just effects to make something look a little bigger and fancy, and it's all about presentation, making something look a little bigger depending on the size of how many patients, let's say, had that DRG. Okay, so there is some representation um, based on the size of the bubble. And then there is also another side of it, because you can interpret it where in what position it is. Right here, this big bubble, here MSDRG 795 is positioned all the way to the right lower corner here, and it's pretty big, meaning that perhaps with this DRG we have a lot of patients in this particular facility. And the average charges for those, these are dollars on our vertical um, sign here. We have their average charges are about below 5,000. Okay, so this is a pretty low paid DRG, but we do have a large number of patients. This is high volume, low pay MSDRG. On the other side, we have this other big bubble here that's high volume. We have between 5 and 600 patients. You see that? All right. And then this is pretty high paying, from 20 to 25,000. Okay. So these can be very impressive and easy to understand when you're explaining, and they create a bigger effect than just plain putting the data on the table. All right. So they're not very, they're not as fancy as they look. Okay, it's just a better, a more clearer way of presenting the data and easier to compare and focus on. Okay, where should our efforts focus here? You know, this one probably that pays big. You know, we ought to make sure that all of our charts that have this MSDRG are actually being coded accurately and submit the claims are being submitted, you know, pretty quick. Okay, so now I'm gonna stop sharing this PowerPoint and we're gonna go do some live activities. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, and we have the CMS Data Navigator website. So can you see my screen? Actually, this is the screen I want you to see. Okay, very good. So the CMS Data Navigator has a bunch of research statistics data and systems. There's this link here. And what I've done is I actually already pulled together, I have these pages ready. So you can go through those yourself at your leisure if you're interested. And there's a bunch of Excel spreadsheets here. There is a CMS program statistics for 2013. That's the latest that they show. And there's national and Medicare data. So I've clicked on national right here. And there are 5 tables that are available. Of course, they have PDF format, but they also have Excel spreadsheet, and I'm interested in the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so you can click on this, and this is available to anybody. It's available to the general public, and it's free. Okay, so it opens in zip files, and then you have an Excel spreadsheet to open up, and you can click on Enable Editing. Okay, so we can take a look here as far as the table goes. Obviously, there is a title, okay? Every cell in the spreadsheet or the table is full. You see that. It's, you know, there is no blank spaces. And that's a rule. When you present data on a table, you got to have a title and you got to have data in every cell. You want to make sure that your columns are clearly labeled. In this case, I have the item and I have the years from 2008, 2009, all the way to 2013. And then I have national health expenditures, dollars in billions. And then underneath, there are different categories from health consumption expenditure and investment. You have to pay attention when you're reading this type of data. The indentations matter. For example, right here we have health consumption and investment. These two make up the national health expenditures. In fact, if you wanted to do a little test, you can. I can do a little equal sign and add up this value plus this value, and it should give me this one. You see, this one, I'm going to make this yellow, equals that. Just telling you, know, sometimes you have to make sense of the data before you start talking about it or do graphs or anything else. Okay, so what are these three then? These three two right here, I'm going to color these. Okay, these are actually components of the health consumption expenditure. And if you add these three, they will equal 2,258.9, and this is billions of dollars. Okay. Scrolling down, then we have another item, U.S. population. They show that over the years. They show gross domestic product over the years in billions of dollars. They show the national health expenditures per capita, which is per person. Okay. So let's say we want to show the growth of health expenditures in total volume. Okay. Not per capita, but overall. So what do I do in order to see how the national health expenditures have gone up over the years? I am going to go with this row right here, and let me just delete this because we just showed that to just for illustration purposes. Okay, so I have now, I'm working with this row, and it is national health expenditures in billions from 2008 to 2013. If I wanted to show the trend of national health expenditures for these 5-6 years, which graph would be the best option? And once I have selected the data, I'm going to hit the insert button, and here are my options. Okay. Now, depending on what version of Microsoft Excel you're using, these might appear differently, so you have to pay attention to that. The best graph to show trend over time is the line chart, okay, line graph. So you can select any of these options. If you want to make a note of the amounts, in each year, in addition to the trend, you can pick that one. Okay, so this would show you national health expenditures in billions. Okay, now you want to make sure that when you select the data, you also select the label. Okay, and in this case, I selected the national health expenditure, and it showed right there as the title of the graph. Sometimes it doesn't, so you have to put the title yourself. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that. Let's say we want to see, we want to look at somewhat of a comparison and look at the gross domestic product. Gross domestic product, by the way, is the total amount of products and services produced in the United States in that particular year, and they are converted into dollars. Okay, so this is our gross domestic product from 2008 to 2013. And these are our national expenditures, health expenditures per capita. Now, if I compare these two, these are not in billions. See, these are in billions, these are not in billions. And I can do a quick graph. Let's see, and hit the control button and select the other one so that you don't have blank cells appearing there. I'm going to hit choose the column chart for a moment. Now here is a deceiving graph, and I'm doing that on purpose, okay? Why? It's deceiving because the blue one looks like it's double the amount of the national health expenditures per capita, but that's only because that's in billions of dollars. Okay, so this really would not be a good way to show your data. Okay, so you have to pay attention to the little details. I'm going to delete it. What might make sense if we still want to compare how much are we spending on healthcare from all the money that we actually generate? Maybe the national health expenditures in billion would make more sense. So if I go up here and then I select the gross domestic product, so again this, and then hit the control button and then that, and you insert. Now you can do a column chart. This is much better. Okay, it gives you a real picture of how much we're spending, from the money we're making. Imagine if we were to simplify this, imagine a household making this much money, as much as the red bar shows, and spending this much of it on healthcare only. Does it give you, just by looking at how tall these are, can you get a quick idea of how much we're spending on healthcare from that? It's about 1/5, right? Okay, see, that's the power of the graphs. And sure enough, if you go down here in the chart, you have the national health expenditures as a percent of gross domestic product, which is from 16.4 all the way to 17.4. See, it's pretty close to 1/5. So we're spending 1/5 of the money we make in healthcare as a country, which is pretty big. It would be better if we spend it on entertainment and maybe better food, but that's where it goes. All right. So how do I put a chart here? Maybe I can title this, and see now it didn't pick up a chart title because the system might be a little confused. What are you really showing? Are you showing the national health expenditures or the gross domestic product? And I can say national health expenditures versus GDP. You can come up with your own meaningful titles. And if you want to save this, but you don't want to leave it here because it makes it too cumbersome, then you can move chart to a new sheet and you can leave it there, okay, by itself. You're going to do this in your assignment this week, but with different data. So let's look at this green highlighted data that I have here. I have a category that's health consumption expenditure. So these are billions of dollars that are spent on health consumption. Okay, so what we spend to treat people. And what exactly are they spent on? Personal health care, government administration, and net cost of health insurance and government public health activities. So what could be a nice way, an easy, quick, meaningful way to show the composition of these um, towards the health consumption expenditure? Yes, very good. So I'm going to highlight all of these. So I have personal health care, government and administration and government public health, along with the data. And let's say I want 2013. So not 2008, I want 2013 data. So I'm going to go all the way there, and then insert, and I do a pie chart. So what is my chart title? Well, you could list all three, or you could actually say health, consumption, expenditure, because that's what really this is. And it's breakdown. Okay, breakdown of the items that are included in the health consumption expenditure. You can make it bigger. Okay, you can put it in another sheet. It doesn't matter. Okay, so in this case, again, it made sense. It made more sense to actually just show a pie chart and show the composition of these are the three components, the big components of that. All right. Okay, let's go back to our data and let's say we want to work with another table. This one here, population and percent distribution projections. Okay, so I have my table. So these are population and percent distribution projections by sex and selected age groups. And I have by year, it goes actually all the way down. These are projections all the way up to 2060. And then for both sexes, under 18, 18 to 64, and then 65 and above. So if I wanted to compare these three group ages, under 18, 18 to 64, and over 65. What graph might I use? Well, the histogram would be used for continuous data. That's a good point. Usually, though, it's used when they are measured. They're continuous and in equal distances. That's the best use of it. So it wouldn't be wrong, but typically, they use it more when there's equal distances. So let's go with a simple bar graph. Yes, so I have the year, and then what else do I want? I want not total, okay, because if you throw in the total, it will disturb the data. We can select it. We can select and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to select all the data labels here, and then for 2015, here's the data. And insert, I'm going to select a bar graph. Now, you see how by putting the total in there, it gives us the wrong perception because you can't compare the total and its parts in this fashion. Okay, so I'm going to actually remove that from the data. I only want under 18 and then 18 to 64 and over 65. There. So this is better comparison. Let me just make it a little bigger. And it shows you, okay, here's what happened for some reason here. Whenever you have a year put in your, as a label, 2015 actually is a number. However, in this case, it shouldn't be read as a number. That's why you see this little, bar, blue bar here. This is wrong. It shouldn't be there. What's happening is that Excel is taking 2015 as a number and it's comparing it to the number of people under 18, people between 18 and 64, and over 65 years of age. Okay, one way to get rid of that sometimes is to format that as text, and sometimes Excel is even more stubborn and it doesn't do that. So what I can do is type in year 2015, and in that case it should read it differently. Okay, so let's do, or you can just select this data here and insert. There we go. And then this way you get rid of that. So here's what I'm trying to show here, and the point I want to make is that just because it came up, it popped up, you selected the graph and it seems like, well, that's the way I'm supposed to do it. You're doing things right, but you still have to take another look at your table, at your graph, and see if it's making sense. That little blue bar there just did not make sense because you're not comparing 2015. It doesn't make sense to compare the year 2015 with the number of people under 18 years of age. Okay, so that's all I'm trying to say. And any way you can manage to do that, again, Excel may not be the perfect, it's a great program, but may not be perfect in some scenarios. But there are a lot of other statistical programs out there that don't make those types of errors or mistakes. And here too, if there is a different way of formatting it, we wouldn't have that problem either. Okay? Does that make sense? So this is good for comparisons where we're expecting the population between, well, right now actually we just passed 2015, so this is old data, but the genders between 18 and 64, they are the majority of the population, and this is the workforce, if you will. Okay, let's go to another let's go to another data table and close this. And let's go to Medicare data. Okay, Medicare enrollment, Part A, Part B. There's tons of data here. We can just pick the first one and play a little bit with it. Here's a zip file. We open it, and here's our table. You have to click Enable Editing in order to do anything with it. Again, we have the title, we have the rows and the columns, everything is complete. There's the sources here, by the way. Note, this is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's a CMS Chronic Conditions Data Warehouse. The word warehouse, that should ring a bell for you, right? These are huge data warehouses that collect data that's reported by various healthcare facilities and also all the enrollees that are under Medicare. So here we have total enrollment numbers by year from 2008 all the way to 2013. So if I wanted to show total enrollment over the years, which would be the better graph? Line graph, right? Okay, so I could actually pick these and then this data over here and not that. I want the line graph. And it's doing the same thing with the years. Okay, so we want to make sure we remove that. Okay, so you can click. That's another quick way to remove, to get rid of the years, because it was showing 2008, 2009, 2010, all of these, it was showing that as data. So you delete that. Now you get a better picture here, and you see that the total enrollment for Medicare has been going up from 2008 to 2013. Okay. This was just, like I said, a little illustration of the three graphs that were at the beginning of the presentation. I just wanted to show you that, you know, there are data out there that you can work with, that you can analyze, that you can look at. Of course, when you start working at the healthcare facilities, you'll have something more concrete. And the points that I was trying to make is that you want to make sure that the tables are complete and clear. You have everything marked clearly. The labels are there with the graphs. You have the titles, you have the axis, and you have the values that you need, and they serve the purpose. The most important thing is for them to serve the purpose. Are there any questions? Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss, to ask? Anything that's not clear for this week? This seemed a pretty straightforward week, but there's always people that have questions. That's why I wanted to still go ahead and hold it. I was hoping actually there would be more people and there would be more questions, but it's okay. Okay, for the Excel week 5 activity. That's good. That's glad. I'm glad to hear. Sure, go ahead. For the pie chart. When we converted values to percentages, you right click on the table. I mean on the pie. Yes. If you want to, that's an option. Because of rounding, it was 0 point something and it rounded. Yeah. And it happens. So in that case, again, don't do it, because you you will give the wrong impression. Or if you want to still do that for all the others, you can insert, like here, for example, I can pull a, you still see my screen, right? So let's say I want to clarify something. So I can use, trying to find my tables, no pictures. There's a tool we have in Word, or you can use a text box to clarify something and just put something. This value was rounded. This value is 0.25 or something like that. Yeah. So you can have a little box. Now, what I was looking for actually was for those bubbles that I use. I'm able to use them in PowerPoints and in Word document. I haven't looked here. I haven't had an opportunity to look here for that, but I'm sure there's an option somewhere. If you look, take a screenshot. These, no, that's graphic art. Shapes right here. Yeah, here they are. So if you go under the shapes and you pull this, for example, then you can say, sorry. So this is my, and say this should be, this is, okay, this is 0.25 or something like that. You can make it bigger. You can position it any way you want. No, it's not particular for this, but you understand, you get the picture. Okay? Yeah, be creative with these. Again, the focus should be to clearly represent the data. If you have managed that, then you're usually, in general, you're correct. Now there's the details of it sometimes that go, is it visible? Is it big enough? Sometimes the tiny numbers are hard to view, especially if you have a PowerPoint and a lot of data and you're trying to get that through. So there's other considerations. But for the purpose of this class, you're not going to do a presentation and I can pretty much see everything. It doesn't matter what size. So as long as you have the correct graph and it's complete, you're okay. And talking about the week 5 assignment, please do give the interpretation. Type them up in those boxes. Don't leave them blank. And don't just write one word. Usually an explanation requires a sentence or two. Okay? If you just say increase, how do I understand what is increasing or what's decreasing? Okay. So just a general comment for everybody. All right. Any other questions? All right, then. We'll call it a night. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope it was helpful. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me. You too, Ty. I know you're in another class, but my email is dsharifi@devry.edu. I'll type it here. I know Professor Zaleski is very helpful too. If you if you feel like you want to refer to anything, here's my email address. All right, then. Have a good night. I'm going to end the recording here.